Chapter 391, No Turning Back. Han Shao surveyed the no longer young magus in front of him. Crowley was a dark-green magus. An average student in Babylon Academy of Magic and Force might not have any impression of him. However, Han Shao, who once did odd jobs within the necromancy major, knew of this person's existence. At that time, Han Shao and Jack were always in charge of cleaning the statues along the path first thing in the morning. All the outstanding graduates from past years of the academy each had a statue placed along the path. Crowley was impressively one of the numerous statues which Han Shao had previously cleaned for a period of time. The time when Crowley was in the Dark Major was formerly also the Dark Major's period of glory. Ever since Crowley became a journeyman mage, 4 consecutive years of the Academy's competition between majors had been swept by the Dark Major's team that was led by Crowley. After Crowley had graduated from the Dark Major, he very quickly also became a Dark Archmage. Crowley really had many major achievements before he traveled around the profound continent in the past few years. Merely too much time has passed. Due to Crowley's fascination and further advancing, his reputation had slowly waned and was gradually forgotten by the people in Lancelot Empire. It even reached the point where some new teachers and students of the Dark Major had never heard any information about him. Han Shao looked at Crowley, who had issued him a challenge, recalling the time when he was an errand slave. Looking up at Crowley's statue, Han Shao suddenly had an absurd feeling in his heart. Just a while ago he had actually become such a person's opponent and was even being challenged by him. Han Shao could feel a sense of pride rising within himself. It was precisely because of this that Han Shao had an extremely splendid smile. However, when Crowley saw Han Shao's splendid smile, Crowley interpreted it as Han Shao completely looking down on him. Crowley felt that he was being insulted, holding back the anger in his heart, and said, "Count Brian, what is the meaning of this? Could it be that you feel contempt about my challenge and intend to reject it?" Smiling as he shook his head, Han Shao couldn't help but straightened his mind, which was imagining wildly. He then sized up Crowley more seriously, hesitating a moment before knitting his brows, and said, "You have misunderstood. I was only recalling past events. When I was still an errand servant in the necromancy department, I had previously cleaned your statue. Who would have guessed that today you would issue a challenge to me? Honestly speaking, I feel extremely honored." Crowley was astonished and couldn't help but turn his head to look at his old friend in the Dark Major, Dio, seemingly wanting to seek confirmation from Dio about the matter. That's right. A few years ago, as an errand servant, he had previously cleaned the hallway leading to the Dark Major's building. When you became a Dark Grand Magus, had previously applied with the Dean to place your statue there. What is said is correct. He had indeed cleaned your statue before. Dio felt somewhat awkward as he explained, but still narrated in full detail to clear Crowley's doubts. When Crowley heard Dio's explanation and considered that Han Shao had previously cleaned his statue, he couldn't help but hesitate slightly in his heart, and actually didn't really want to challenge Han Shao anymore. No matter what, Han Shao had previously shown respect to him. For him to act in this way appeared slightly insincere. By the side, the Dark Major's person in charge, Dio, saw Crowley showing some hesitation. He couldn't help but hastily gave Crowley a meaningful glance before smiling slightly and said to Han Shao, "Count Brian, so do you actually plan to accept Crowley's challenge or not?" "Of course, didn't I just say it a moment ago? I'm extremely honored." Han Shao smiled cheerfully as he replied, shooting a glance at Dio. Han Shao understood what Dio was planning, but he had absolute confidence and wasn't afraid of defeating Crowley here. "Very good. In that case, I would act as the witness. Are both of you agreeable?" Suddenly a Miss walked over from the Light Major's area, gracefully smiling as he suggested. The Light Major's person in charge, Voigtlander, had also walked over with a Miss. Voigtlander had a schadenfreude expression as he looked over. Regardless of the Dark Major's Crowley or Han Shao, they were considered the enemy to Voigtlander. For these two sides to battle, he would be enjoying happily no matter who won or lost. "Crowley, this is Lord Miss. You should have heard of him." When Dio saw Miss turning up uninvited and even made such a suggestion, hastily introducing a Miss to Crowley, who had left the Lancelot Empire for a long time. Previously, when Crowley left the Lancelot Empire, Miss was only a Dark Star envoy of Dark Mantle. Thus, he would naturally not know Miss. However, When he returned to the Lancelot Empire, he did find out about the current bigwigs in the Lancelot Empire. When he heard Dio's introduction, he immediately greeted him as respectfully grinning as he said, "Of course, with Lord Amos witnessing this battle would be for the best." "I am extremely honored as well," Han Shao bowed toward Amos courteously as he replied, causing Amos to return the greeting once again. The surrounding teachers and students from the various factions all continuously rushed over. These people have heard of Han Shao's great name, and seeing that Han Shao, a recently broken through Grand Magus necromancer upstart, was sparring with a dark Grand Magus of unknown origin, all of them were indescribably excited. There weren't many Grand Magus ranked characters within Babylon Academy of Magic and Force, with most teachers of the various factions being at Adept Mage or Archmage ranks. As the students would hardly even be able to see teachers sparring with each other, they had definitely not come across a spar between two Grand Magi, and hence were extremely excited. "Brian, all the best, you will definitely win." Out of a sudden a familiar voice rang in his ear. Han Shu turned to take a look, noticing Lisa in a corner of the surrounding waving a fist animatedly to cheer him on. Han Shao felt a warmth in his heart, recalling how Lisa had always believed and supported him a long time ago. After all this time, Lisa had matured from an unruly and willful girl, not only appearing more youthful and energetic, she also had an additional unyielding temperament. It seems that the period of time where she suffered pain had also given her benefits. While Han Shao gazed at Lisa, he also saw Fanny, who was beside Lisa. Fanny didn't have the same unconditional trust that Lisa had in Han Shao. Instead, her eyes were forever filled with worry. No matter how strong Han Shao became, as long as there was a trace of danger, she would be worried for Han Shao. Admiring the two women's splendid grins, Han Shao then turned back to face Crowley, courteously inquiring, "How would you like to compete?" "With my persistent character, those that have battled me opening have never been able to survive." Hearing this statement, Crowley was startled, showing an obvious stunned expression. What Crowley knew about Han Shao's origins and past was based on what Dio had told him. He personally didn't know much about Han Shao's matters. Now that he heard Han Shao making such a statement, he suddenly had an uneasy feeling. On this point I can help Brian elaborate. Including Brute Merchants Alliance's Liacane, Bryant had dueled and killed his opponent on 13 occasions. Right, just to warn Mr. Crowley, among those that Brian has killed include Dreadbud Knights Commander Dragon Rider Celt. I was afraid you didn't know, hence I'm informing you in advance. Amos could see that Crowley was somewhat astonished, figuring out that he perhaps was clear about Han Shao's past, and hence couldn't help but enlighten Crowley. Hearing Amos' comments, Crowley was shaken once again, his gaze towards Dio already containing hints of resentment. When Dio saw Crowley looking at him resentfully, he clearly had a guilty conscience, awkwardly turning his head. After hesitating for a moment, Dio suddenly said, "Let's forget about it. Both of you are in fact considered members of our Dark Major. Let's not compete on such an auspicious day lest we harm the friendly relations." When Dio saw Crowley's resentful gaze as well as heard Amos' reminder, he finally cleared his mind of his fury. Crowley was invited by the Dark Major. If he was defeated by Han Shao, Dio would definitely be reproached, and perhaps even the Dark Major's teachers would push the blame to him after the event. "Mr. Crowley, I feel that we should just let it pass." What Mr. Dio said is reasonable. "Let's not hurt the harmony. Both of you are considered to be on the same side." Amos smiled gently as he advised Crowley, "No, I still wish to compare notes with Count Brian." Under the gaze of the crowd, Crowley had no means of backing down. Hence he forced himself to insist on competing. At this moment a ray of white light radiated in the center, and Babylon Academy's Dean Emma appeared. She looked at both Han Shao and Crowley before smiling and said, "Comparing notes in magic is a common way of improvement among magi. However, as you aren't enemies, there's no need for a life or death duel." "Brian, today's our annual recruitment. You wouldn't be thinking of not giving face to your alma mater, right?" "Of course not, I was just joking." "In any case, it's just a spar. If Mr. Crowley doesn't mind, how about we change our location?" When Han Shao saw Emma appear, he immediately had a friendly smile on his face and invited Crowley to another location. Crowley was clearly relieved, forcefully laughing as he replied, "I've left for too long and aren't familiar with this place. Where do you think would be a more suitable location? There's no need to choose, just use the Dark Mage's #1 practice grounds. There's a large-scale magic barrier there. It should be fine as long as the both of you pay a little attention. Please did not harm the friendly relations. When Emma saw that Han Shao wasn't serious, she felt relieved, smiling as she spoke. Just like this, Han Shao and Crowley both agreed. The recruitment was suddenly paused midway, and when Han Shao and Crowley entered the large practice grounds, teachers and students of the various majors had also rushed over. Chapter 392. I admit defeat. The Dark Mage's #1 practice field was extremely wide. The sparring between Han Shao and Crowley had attracted numerous teachers and students over to watch. Among them were Ms. and Dean Emma, who were the witnesses for the battle as well as being in charge of ensuring everyone's safety. There was a barrier deployed within the practice field to prevent the strength of the magic from spreading out. On top of that, Emma personally partitioned a separate small space for the audience to hide in while they watched the battle. The recruitment outside could be considered to have been temporarily ceased. Dean, why are you willing to let the two of them duel on such an occasion? As Amiz and Emma stood together, Amiz, who was dressed in a spotless white robe and appearing otherworldly refined, had a smile on his face as he asked Dean Emma. Emma glanced at Amiz, who was just walking out of Babylon Academy of Magic and Force. Previously, when Amiz was studying in the Light Major, Emma was already the teacher in charge of the Space Major. Emma could also be considered as Emma's senior within Babylon Academy. Hence Amiz was very respectful toward her. During that time, that fellow Crowley was proud and arrogant. I see that he has not really changed even after such a long time, and dampening his spirit isn't a bad thing. Besides, Brian had just become a Grand Magus Necromancer and probably still isn't very adept at controlling some of the new necromancy magic. A spar which doesn't cause disharmony would actually really be beneficial to their progress. Emma benevolently smiled, her face covered with wrinkles as she explained to Amiz. In that case, who do you think will win? Amiz pondered for a while before inquiring. I believe you ought to be clearer than me on this. Emma faintly smiled as she glanced at Amiz as though implying something. Amiz chuckled when he heard Emma's response, nodding his head without replying. As one of the heavyweights of Dark Mantle, Amiz knew of Han Shao's accomplishments in recent days. Through the baptism of blood and fire, Han Shao, as a necromancer who grasped mysterious techniques, had already done many hidden large-scale moves. Apart from Redbud Knight's leader Dragon Rider Celt, Han Shao had also fought with the Church of Light's Red Archbishop Kasi multiple times. Amiz was also aware of other news. To be able to kill Light Grand Magus Ferguson before becoming a Grand Magus himself, regardless of how you saw it, Han Shao had a higher chance of winning. The reason why Amiz was interested to judge the battle this time around was simply because he wanted to personally witness Han Shao's improvement. In fact, Amiz wouldn't be surprised at a victory. Han Shao beating Crowley was something both Amiz and Emma felt was inevitable. Members of every faction were full of expectations as they watched the two Grand Magus in the center. The eyes of necromancy majors Fanny, Lisa and other students were even brighter, their gazes fixed on Han Shao, wanting to clearly see Han Shao's every move. Within the Lancelot Empire, it isn't that there aren't Grand Magus necromancers. However, those people were absorbed in exploring magical knowledge and rarely appeared before others. This would perhaps be the only time your generation would be able to watch a Grand Magus necromancer fight. No matter what, you have to watch attentively. Although Fanny was worried for Han Shao, there wasn't much she could say now that things have developed to this point. As an instructor for the necromancy major, Fanny gave instructions to all the students to watch carefully, with Fanny herself also completely focusing her attention on the fight. Teacher Fanny, don't worry, we will earnestly watch Brian's moves, Lisa shouted excitedly, her bright eyes fixed on Han Shao's figure from the beginning. Although it's just a spar, Mr. Crowley shouldn't hold back. I'm a necromancer. If you give me the time to summon undead creatures, I think that would be disadvantageous to you. Han Shao smiled calmly as he said to the opposing Crowley, who had taken out a green magic staff. Han Shao had complete confidence in dealing with Crowley, as his mental strength had once again improved greatly after just returning from the netherworld. Han Shao's mental state was unprecedentedly good. Having reached the separate demon realm, Han Shao could monitor Crowley's every movement with the assistance of a few mystical demons. The strength and speed of his body were also something Crowley couldn't compare to. As Han Shao stably surpassed Crowley in all aspects, he appeared extremely confident. In that case I wouldn't be polite. Count Brian, please be careful. Crowley, who had learned of Han Sha-O's prowess from Dio and Emma's just before entering the practice field, did not underestimate him because of his age. He instead regarded Han Sha-O as the strongest opponent in his whole life. Once Crowley, who did not dare relax the slightest, finished speaking, the magic staff in his hands started emitting grayish-brown light following his incantation. The dark elements within the practice field suddenly seemed to enliven like elves. As Crowley slowly chanted his magic spell, 6 huge hands of death suddenly formed around Han Sha-O, fiercely crushing down toward Han Sha-O. The Grand Magus ranked Crowley was indeed outstanding, already using the mighty hands of death as his first move. Furthermore, he was able to form 6 at once, clearly treating Han Sha-O as his life's most formidable opponent. The 6 hands of death were much more lifelike than what Emily had used. The 6 gigantic hands of death even had fine veined patterns on their palms, as though really belonging to some dark world's creature. The coarse and long fingers also had sharp hook-like fingernails, appearing extremely terrifying. It could be seen that Crowley was extremely cautious and didn't immediately attack Han Sha-O violently. He simply nimbly manipulated 6 hands of death to gradually approach Han Sha-O. In this way he would slowly cause terrifying pressure to Han Sha-O, yet still abiding by the principles of a spar. When Han Sha-O saw the 6 hands of death uniformly pressing on, he understood that Crowley really did not intend to gun for his life and was really in accordance with Emma's words to purely spar. This caused Han Sha-O, who was prepared to deal with sudden changes, to have a favorable impression of Crowley. Taking out his white bone staff, Han Sha-O recited the incantation for the soul vortex necromancy magic. Out of a sudden, hundreds of wraiths appeared, revolving rapidly in the void in front of Han Sha-O, forming a vortex that sucked up the surrounding magic elements. The 6 hands of death that were slowly pressing toward Han Sha-O suddenly felt the intense force of attraction generated by the soul vortex, one after another involuntarily being sucked toward the soul vortex in front of Han Sha-O. Soul vortex was a Grand Magus ranked necromancy magic that Han Sha-O had just mastered. This necromancy magic utilized the power of wraiths. In the netherworld, a single wraith's strength was next to nothing. However, by controlling hundreds of wraiths with his mental energy and forming soul tremor according to necromancy laws, Han Sha-O was able to generate enormous might. Against those peculiar magic that contained magic elements, this soul vortex was able to create an intense suction force, pulling these magic attacks into the vortex and using the numerous wraiths to grind them away little by little. Furthermore, if creatures with souls were sucked into the soul vortex, the numerous wraiths could directly bind the creature's soul and dragging it from the profound continent into the netherworld. For all living creatures in this world, once they were dragged to the netherworld, their soul would never find the way to return. To the people in the profound continent, creatures who were dragged into the netherworld can be considered as dead. After the soul vortex was formed, Han Sha-O's silk-like mental energy entered the spell, assisting the revolving of the wraiths and vortex. The strength of the suction force gradually increased after the insertion of Han Sha-O's mental energy and the revolving of the vortex. The 6 hands of death, which were slowly pressing toward Han Sha-O, suddenly became extremely heavy, as though becoming a stream flowing into the ocean, slowly entering the soul vortex. Crowley and Han Sha-O were separated by a big distance, hence Crowley wasn't affected by the pull of the soul vortex. Furthermore, the suction force formed by the soul vortex was only effective toward attacks formed from magic elements and living creatures possessing souls. It wasn't effective toward ordinary objects and physical attacks. When Crowley saw the 6 hands of death actually being absorbed completely, his expression became even heavier. He understood in his heart that Han Sha-O's Grand Magus necromancer strength was indeed extremely formidable. The disappearance of the 6 hands of death caused Crowley to be fearful and simultaneously become even more cautious. Following his reciting of another spell, the green magic staff in his hand started slowly emitting gloomy light again. When Crowley finished reciting his spell, he pointed the green magic staff at Han Sha-O, causing a mysterious contract to suddenly form between himself and Han Sha-O. Dense dark elements suddenly condensed together, violently crowding into the space surrounding Han Sha-O. Han Sha-O's body suddenly tensed and was actually unable to move. Not only his limbs were bound, even his mouth seemed to be covered. The dark elements were like a rope slowly constricting around Han Sha-O. Prison of Darkness was an advanced dark magic utilizing one's mental energy to gather the dark element and form a contract with the enemy and firmly imprisoning the enemy, causing the enemy to be unable to move his body. In just a sudden, apart from his mental energy and demonic yuan energy that could still be circulated, Han Sha-O's physical body had been firmly bound by the dark elements. During this process, Crowley waved his green magic staff once again and 5 spheres of destruction slowly formed and approached Han Sha-O. Crowley had a slightly pleased expression. This was his most proficient and most confident magic. Han Sha-O had just advanced to become a Grand Magus Necromancer, hence his mental strength definitely shouldn't be as resilient as his own. Prison of Darkness was actually just a contest of mental strength. For a high-ranked Dark Grand Magus like Crowley, he could use Prison of Darkness to completely imprison magi who had lower mental strength than himself, causing them to be unable to move. He had specifically focused on this weak point of Han Sha-O just advancing to become a Grand Magus Necromancer, believing that Han Sha-O's mental strength was definitely not as abundant as his own. This was why he had suddenly unleashed the Prison of Darkness. When Han Sha-O was restricted by Prison of Darkness, Crowley felt pleased with himself, thinking his heart that such a prominent figure was actually restricted by the Prison of Darkness. Emma and Numas, who were by the side, both watched him attentively, adding that Crowley had only wanted to make use of Han Sha-O to become famous. He would definitely not plan to kill Han Sha-O. Thus, when the deadly spheres of destruction were formed, Crowley did not immediately launch them at Han Sha-O and had slowly sent them toward Han Sha-O instead. "Count Brian, you've lost. Concede before the sphere of destruction hits you." Crowley had a confident expression, smiling as he looked at the motionless Han Sha-O. Hearing this sentence, the surrounding spectators were in an uproar, evidently not foreseeing such a situation to happen. Those necromancy students that had joined due to Han Sha-O's reputation all showed doubtful, hesitating expressions. Lisa, upon seeing their expressions, suddenly shouted angrily, "You brats, what kind of expression is that? How could Brian lose to such an old fellow?" Lisa's fiend-like appearance actually intimidated the new students, causing them to involuntarily turn their heads and not dare to look at the fiery Lisa so as to avoid Lisa unleashing her anger on them. Crowley is indeed Crowley. Once he spotted the weakness in the brat's mental strength, he used the Prison of Darkness to restrict him before he could summon any undead creatures. Who would have thought? It seems like Crowley is really going to win. Dark Major's teacher in charge, Dio, couldn't repress his happiness, his voice sounding happier than usual as he explained to the surrounding Dark Major's instructors and students. Contrariwise, Dean, Emma and Amiz both had calm expressions, as though not at all anxious for Han Sha-O, and instead gazed amusingly at Han Sha-O, wanting to see how Han Sha-O responded. Having absorbed a serene luster gem, Han Sha-O's mental strength wasn't weaker than Crowley's. However, Han Sha-O did not use his mental strength to resist Crowley and instead incited his demonic yuan energy to strengthen his body once again. When Han Sha-O suddenly struggled, a sharp and clear paw sounded. "That doesn't seem likely." Han Sha-O smiled as he replied. The Prison of Darkness had been broken, and he waved the white bone staff, shooting out rows of bone spears, smashing apart the 5 spheres of destruction that had yet to reach his body. He then summoned an old fey demon to charge toward Crowley before summoning a few evil knights and an undead army to emerge. "Crowley lost." Emma smiled as she said before looking at Amiz and asked, "However, how did Brian break Crowley's Prison of Darkness?" "I did not detect any fluctuation in his mental energy." Amiz, did you notice how he did it?" Amiz shrugged his shoulders as he replied gracefully, "Even the dean did not see it clearly. How could I have figured it out?" However, Brian has always been following Lord Candide. I believe based on your relationship with Lord Candide, you ought to be more familiar regarding Brian's situation. Amiz had previously focused his attention on Han Sha-O precisely to see how he reacted. He had never doubted Han Sha-O's victory because as a character who could defeat Celt as well as Red Archbishop Kasi, Han Sha-O was definitely not someone Crowley could defeat. Merely what surprised Amiz was that even with his complete attention he did not decipher how Han Sha-O had achieved victory. However, The only thing Amiz could confirm was that Han Shao really did not utilize mental energy. Right, it must definitely be that mysterious martial technique. This fellow could already unleash such strength just by using his martial technique. With his strength as a Grand Magus Necromancer, in addition to that, it seems that Lancelot's empire would really be his to control in the future. To have such a mysterious martial technique, who exactly is his master? Why have I not heard of him and have also not been able to find out? This is indeed too strange. Amiz thought silently as he gazed at Han Shao. Did you see that? Did all you fools see that? Lisa was ecstatic, shouting at the youngsters, cheering after Han Shao easily neutralized the prison of darkness. When Han Shao summoned his undead creatures, these youngsters had all cried out in surprise. Some of the youngsters were incomparably excited as they saw the sinister dark creatures, shouting to their companions, "Look at that, that's called an evil knight. It's as powerful as a human earth knight, but its physical body is even harder." The girls were somewhat instinctively fearful of these fierce undead creatures. However, with the explanation of these youngsters, they became extremely inquisitive. In particular, Lisa's shouting had allowed them to relax and start to timidly size up these undead creatures. From the moment Han Shao opened his mouth to speak, Crowley knew that he had lost. When he saw the enormous undead army appear, Crowley had thoroughly lost confidence in achieving victory. In the profound continent, the bane of necromancers are light magi. Apart from them, in duels between magi of the same rank, once numerous undead creatures appear, it would essentially signify the necromancer's victory. For instance, just the old fey demon that had appeared this time was enough to cause a headache for Crowley. Adding on the numerous undead creatures, apart from rapidly purifying them with light magic, magi of other majors would appear to be out of options. Sure enough, even before the old fey demon had reached Crowley, Crowley sighed dejectedly, putting down the green magic staff in his hand, and shouted loudly, "Count Brian, I admit defeat." Chapter 393. Being a role model at this moment, the old fey demon and its thick sharp claws had already charged before Crowley. Hearing Crowley's declaration, Han Shao gave orders with a thought. All the undead creatures froze in a flash, displaying Han Shao's extraordinary manipulation ability to the extreme. Although Crowley was conceited and vain, he still abided by the rules during the sparring. When he felt that he was able to beat Han Shao comfortably, he still didn't increase the speed of the spheres of destruction to attack Han Shao. This caused Han Shao to have a good impression of him, and thus, when Han Shao saw him admitting defeat, Han Shao immediately made the undead creatures cease their attack. When Crowley was flustered as he looked at the old fey demon in front of him, all the undead creatures from the surroundings suddenly disappeared following Han Shao's long incantation. Only when the old fey demon that was the first to appear in front of him also suddenly disappeared did Crowley truly loosen his breath. "Mr. Crowley, your strength is extremely profound. I believe that most grand magi would not be your match. If Mr. Crowley is interested, I can help to recommend you to Third Prince Lawrence. There's no harm in considering it." After sending all the undead creatures back to the netherworld, Han Shao had gone over to the side of Dark Grand Magus Crowley, commenting in a low voice. Crowley's strength was truly remarkable. There weren't many magi who could become Grand Magus in the Lancelot Empire, and all of them possessed lofty positions. Since Crowley had returned from travel across various countries, he would surely wish to have an illustrious status within the Empire. Such a character was a target that every power would pursue. This was the same for Lawrence as well, hence Han Shao invited him on behalf of Lawrence. Crowley clearly understood a little of Lancelot Empire's current situation and couldn't help but show an uncomfortable expression. As His Majesty's illegitimate child, Lawrence was the least supported successor. If Crowley followed Lawrence, he simply wouldn't know if he would suffer a calamity after the successor has been chosen. "Mr. Crowley, I know what you are apprehensive about. However, some matters aren't determined by external rumors. You give Lawrence some time, which could also be considered giving yourself some time. You can decide again on which power you choose after a few days." When Han Shao saw that Crowley didn't respond, he smiled and elaborated further. "All right, on account of Count Brian's honor, I'll consider for a few more days." Crowley could tell that there were hidden meanings within Han Shao's sentence, and thus, hesitated a while before replying. Han Shao nodded his head smiling as he replied, "In the future you will definitely be proud of your decision today." Han Shao directly departed the practice field without explaining further, not showing any reaction to the crowd's shock and the necromancy students' cheers. He first nodded his head toward Amos and Dean Emma from afar to send his regards before heading toward Fanny's group of necromancy major students, smiling as he said, "Teacher Fanny, the recruitment can continue." When Fanny saw Han Shao heading over with his eyes on her from beginning to end, she felt shy yet delighted, hurriedly saying, "Let's go, everyone shouldn't stay here anymore. Let's continue with our unfinished matters." When Han Shao and Fanny left the area together, Amos's gaze was continuously fixed on Han Shao's movement. Only after Han Shao disappeared from the practice field did he mumble softly to himself while seeming to be thinking about something, "That youngster is still a Casanova. That female teacher, why does it seem like I've seen her before somewhere?" Dean Emma glanced at Amos, who seemed to be deep in thought, and felt somewhat amazed. Who knew that Amos' gaze was that sharp, appearing to recall something just by taking a glimpse at Fanny. This caused Emma to be shocked, thinking inwardly that as one of the three heavyweights just like Candide, Amos really can't be belittled. "Alright, this matter has already ended, I'll also take my leave." Amos, do take a good walk around. It seems like you haven't returned to your alma mater for a long time. Seeing Amos having an expression of deep thought, Emma suddenly spoke as though not wanting him to realize Fanny's identity that quickly. As one of the three heavyweights of the Empire's Dark Mantle, Amos knew the secret matters of each noble at the back of his hand. Even Firenze at the southern border of the Empire was no exception. Having browsed over numerous materials, Amos had once seen information pertaining to Firenze's family. However, Fanny was much younger at that time, and Amos only saw a few pictures at that time. For him to be able to feel that someone was familiar just based on pictures he saw a few years ago, his memory is already extremely astonishing. Amos, who was pondering deeply, had his thoughts broken by Emma's words. He didn't continue contemplating and instead smiled gracefully and replied, "Dean, go ahead to handle your matters. I'll just walk around casually and we'll be leaving soon." Emma smiled and nodded. A streak of white light flashed as she disappeared. After Emma left, Amos couldn't help but glance at Crowley, who had just walked out of the practice field. He suddenly said, "Mr. Crowley, it's best if you carefully consider what Marquis Brian had just said. As a schoolmate, I hope that you would make the right choice." Marquis Crowley, who was currently sampling the bitter taste of defeat, raised his head and say that the one who spoke was Amos. Thinking over what Amos had just said, he couldn't help but become suspicious. "Yes, Marquis Brian. Just today His Majesty has already officially conferred Brian as Marquis. The various cities and towns surrounding Bretel City, including a few bandit areas that he occupied, would be Marquis Brian's territory. Besides, I'm afraid that no one amongst equally ranked Grand Magi would be able to defeat him. For you to lose to him isn't something shameful. You shouldn't mind too much about it. Instead, you should properly think about what he said to you previously. I've said my piece, it's up to you if you listen." Amos smiled as he explained before leaving, with two sword masters not waiting for Crowley's response. "Marquis, he's actually already a Marquis." Crowley muttered to himself before his eyes slowly brightened, saying to himself softly that Amos is His Majesty's Hand of Darkness and surely knows of certain matters. It looks like in this trip back to school it appears that apart from being defeated, I still gained something. I must definitely consider things properly. While Crowley was still deliberating which power he should join, Han Shao and Fanny's group had already reached the Necromancy Major's area. With Han Shao overseeing the Necromancy Major, the recruitment of the Necromancy Major was incomparably smooth. In the end, there were actually more than 50 students joining the Necromancy Major. Amongst them there were more than 10 who had excellent mental strength, greatly surpassing the other majors. This is great. According to our academy's regulations, as long as the number of students in a major exceeds 100, the major can become a completely independent and self-sufficient major. Teacher Fanny, our current enrollment has 132 people and can clearly apply to the dean to be independent of the dark major. After tidying up all the documents, Jean couldn't help but laugh heartily. When she heard Jean's statement, Fanny was also delighted, smiling as she said, "That's right, our necromancy major can now become completely independent and no longer be part of the dark major. That shouldn't be a problem." "Awesome. I have long since had enough of the faces of those fellows in the dark major. In the future we no longer need to mix with them. Our necromancy major would just be the necromancy major, no longer a branch of another major. Lisa was extremely excited as she shouted loudly. Lisa's voice was extremely loud, transmitting into the distance. The dark major wasn't far from the necromancy major, and the dark major's teacher in charge Dio clearly heard Lisa's deliberate shout. However, Han Sha-O was currently with the necromancy major, and Crowley had just been defeated by Han Sha-O. Furthermore, Dio found out from Crowley that Han Sha-O had already become a Marquis. This made Dio even more fearful of provoking Han Sha-O. Although he was extremely unhappy, he didn't dare to respond. Amidst the cheers from everyone in the necromancy major, the two instructors Fanny and Jean led the newly accepted students to the necromancy major to handle the relevant procedures. When they reached the necromancy major's area, Jean took charge of matters, while Han Sha-O followed Fanny, talking a little about the essence of necromancy magic in the necromancy major's practice field, as well as helping to clear some of the problematic doubts of the students. Having studied necromancy magic to the rank of Grand Magus Necromancer, Han Sha-O's theoretical and practical knowledge both greatly surpassed Fanny. His comprehension of necromancy magic was much higher as well. Many questions that Jean and Fanny couldn't explain became easy when they reached Han Sha-O. Afterwards, even Jean, who had finished handling matters, had came over. After hesitating a while, Jean also asked Han Sha-O about a few questions he usually came across. The necromancy major had a harmonious atmosphere with Han Sha-O's existence, bringing hope to both the necromancy major's new and existing students. It seemed that from this moment onward, the necromancy major, who had always had a small and weak image, no longer existed. With Han Sha-O's astronomical rise within the Empire's ranks, the necromancy major also rose in tandem within Babylon Academy of Magic and Force, gradually having its own sense of proportion, breaking away from the long-standing dependent relationship with the dark major. Only when the sky had gradually darkened did everyone disperse at Fanny and Jean's instructions. Toward the end, when even Jean had left, Lisa hesitated a moment, staring at Han Sha-O as she asked, "Brian, if I want to look for you, can I find you at your residence?" "Of course. If you are free, you can come over to look for me anytime." Of course I wouldn't be in my residence most of the time. If you are unable to find me, please don't blame me. Han Sha-O smiled as he replied, as long as you agree." "Alright, I'll leave first." "Teacher Fanny, Brian is extremely popular nowadays, you need to watch him closely." Lisa smiled happily before winking toward Fanny, pulling a funny face before leaving. After Lisa had left, Fanny's charming face was flushed. She gazed at Han Sha-O affectionately and said, "Brian, thank you. I didn't think you would come by today. I just happened to be free, and no matter what I have to give you face." "Right, if you really want to thank me, you shouldn't simply use words. I generally prefer people to express themselves through their actions." Han Sha-O laughed deviously, beaming at Fanny as he replied. Fanny resentfully rolled her eyes at Han Sha-O before hesitating a moment and whispered, "In that case, how do you want me to show my thanks?" Out of a sudden, Han Sha-O had already appeared in front of Fanny, lowering his head as he looked at Fanny, whose blush had spread to her neck, extending a finger and pointed at his lips, chuckling as he said, "Take the initiative to kiss me once. That can be considered expressing your thanks." You Brett, you have already become a high-ranked noble. Why have you still not changed your lewd heart?" Fanny blushed, unable to resist beating Han Sha-O's chest with her fist as she pouted playfully. "Come on, who asked teacher to be so beautiful and alluring?" My soul has already been hooked by you. If I don't flirt with you, who should I flirt with?" Han Sha-O frivolously moved his lips toward Fanny, continuously pestering Fanny. Fanny's present mood was unprecedentedly good, and besides, she also truly liked Han Sha-O. After acting coy for a while, she was eventually still unable to resist Han Sha-O, blushing as she superficially kissed Han Sha-O's lips. However, when Fanny shifted away, she was embraced by Han Sha-O, who forcefully kissed her. Out of Han Sha-O's expectations, Fanny responded ardently soon after, giving Han Sha-O a carefree, uninhibited and breathtaking feeling. Overwhelmed by Fanny's response, Han Sha-O's hands started moving dishonestly again, wandering around Fanny's beautiful body. Only when Fanny was kissed till she was out of breath and her body was incomparably fervent did she moan softly as she pushed Han Sha-O away to gasp for breath. Still blushing, she moved further away from Han Sha-O, calming her rapidly heaving plump peaks. She then said tenderly, "Brian, my father will reach Awson City soon. If you don't meet him this time around, he said that he would lead his troops to attack Bretel City. Hearing this, Han Shao suddenly sobered as though a bucket of cold water has been poured on him. He knitted his brows and forced a smile as he asked Fanny, "You've told your father my identity?" Nodding her head, Fanny hastily explained, "He has constantly asked and even investigated. I only told him when I knew that we would definitely be unable to conceal it any longer. Furthermore, you might not know my father's identity. You shouldn't be under the impression that he is joking. My father is different from other people. He is capable of doing anything. I know your father is the true Lord in the eyes of the people at the southern border." Howling Legion's friends. Han Shao took a deep breath before looking at Fanny and replied, How did you find out?" "When did you find out about this?" Fanny was shocked as she lightly cried out, "A few days ago. When I had just returned from Bretel City, Dean Emmett told me when I came to look for you." Han Shao honestly explained to Fanny before replying reluctantly, "All right, when your father arrives I'll go with you to meet him." Han Shao knew that since Firenze was clear about his origin as well as his relationship with Fanny, Han Shao could forget about avoiding him. Presently Han Shao was already hard pressed by Emily and Phoebe. He didn't know what the two of them were talking about, and even now they still haven't come out of the room. Adding in Fanny into the equation, once the three of them know about each other, he wasn't sure what problems might arise. Emily was Betteridge family's daughter-in-law. Her older brother was one of the three heavyweights. Behind Phoebe was sacred swordsman Carl, while Fanny's father Firenze was a well-known madman, known to be someone you wouldn't want to provoke. Han Shao had a headache thinking about what he had to endure once the matter was thoroughly exposed. "Don't worry, my father treats me the best. He wouldn't do anything to you. Furthermore, you might just be the type my father likes. There's no need for you to worry." Fanny thought that Han Shao was worried about her father, thus, she couldn't help but laugh as she explained. Han Shao smiled bitterly as he nodded before saying, "All right, I understand. It's already quite late, I have to leave." "Okay, I'll send you off." When Fanny knew that Han Shao agreed to meet her father, her mood clearly improved. She cheerfully walked toward Han Shao, blushing as she tiptoed and gently kissed Han Shao's cheek before pulling the infatuated Han Shao along as she said, "Let's go, I'll walk you out." Han Shao, who had just been kissed by Fanny, suddenly made up his mind. No matter what happened in the future, as long as Fanny was willing to be with him, no matter Firenze sacred sword master Carl Ormuz, no one should think of meddling in his affairs. If a peaceful solution couldn't be found, he wouldn't hesitate in using force to resolve matters. Han Shao steeled his heart and was no longer agonized, deciding to just deal with matters as they arose. He talked and laughed with Fanny as they walked out of the academy. "All right, I'll take my leave." Han Shao turned around and smiled at Fanny before heading back to his own residence. After Han Shao left, Fanny returned to the necromancy major alone. Along the way, Amiz just happened to be leaving and coincidentally saw Fanny. When Amiz saw Fanny once again, the sense of familiarity became stronger. He knitted his brows as he watched Fanny disappear into the distance. After a moment of serious thinking, Amiz suddenly started muttering softly, "Could it truly be that lunatic's daughter?" "Lord, what's wrong?" one of the sword masters next to Amiz inquired. "No, nothing's wrong. Come, let's quickly return to the Dark Mantle. I've some matters to investigate," Amiz answered, suddenly hastening his steps. Chapter 394 Han Shao's promise. After leaving Babylon Academy of Magic and Force, Han Shao had originally decided to return to his residence. However, he discovered through his mystical demon that Emily and Phoebe were walking out of her room. Contrary to Han Shao's expectations, Emily's eyes were red as though she cried. Phoebe, who originally came to admonish Emily, was not as overbearing as he had imagined and was instead repeatedly persuading Emily. Holding each other's hands, their friendship had deepened since the time when they were in the Valley of Sunshine. Emily's eyes were red as she continuously took tissues to wipe the corners of her eyes, her miserable appearance causing others to feel pity for her. Phoebe gently supported Emily as she sighed. "Elder sister, I was rude. I didn't know your life had been like this." "Let it pass, Phoebe. It's already hard for you to be able to forgive me. I am indeed at fault regarding this matter. An unexpected combination of factors just so happened to occur. Emily gently wiped the corner of her eyes as she confided in Phoebe. Alright, we've almost reached your doorstep. You should head back in and not let others see you in this state. It's all that guy's fault, not yours. I'll settle scores with him and shouldn't have caused trouble for you," Phoebe persuaded Emily, stubbornly urging her to return to her room. "Phoebe, thank you. You are a good woman, no wonder he likes you so much." After entering her room, Emily held Phoebe's hand and said sincerely, "Hayes, I wouldn't have expected that sister's life was worse than mine. I had always thought that as a daughter-in-law of Betteridge family and also having a brother who wields great authority, your life was surely more blessed than mine. Let's forget it. I will be leaving first. It's already quite late. You should get some rest." After she finished speaking, Phoebe released Emily's hands from her grasp and departed from Emily's residence. Han Shao had heard the whole conversation through his mystical demon, causing him to momentarily feel puzzled. He had originally believed that even if both of them did not cause a ruckus, they would be ridiculing and abusing each other. Who would have thought that the matter would turn out in this way? Altering his direction, Han Shao headed towards Betteridge family. Emily, who had just wept, precisely needed his comfort at this moment. No matter the situation, Han Shao did not wish for Emily to be hurt. Having made this decision in his heart, he hastened over. Having been busy in Babylon Academy of Magic and Force for a long time, the sky had already darkened when Han Shao left. There were currently very few people on the streets as the night quietly descended. Han Shao was like a demon in the night, drifting silently across the empty streets toward the Betteridge family. Han Shao did not bother about Phoebe, who had left on a carriage, only dispatching a mystical demon to observe and ensure her safety. He had observed during the conversation between the two girls that Phoebe's emotions seemed to be in check and there shouldn't be any problems. Currently only the red-eyed Emily required his comfort. Hence Han Shao was naturally able to distinguish who he should prioritize. Although the security of the Betteridge family was tight, it meant nothing to Han Shao, who had the mystical demons. He easily avoided the guards and silently arrived in front of Emily's room. Emily's magic barrier was still active around her room, hence Han Shao did not force his way in for fear of Emily's erroneous retaliation. Instead, he gently knocked on the door. "Who's that?" Emily asked as she slowly headed toward the door. "It's me," Han Shao said softly. Emily hastened her steps and arrived at the door within a breath. Upon opening the door, Emily saw that it was indeed Han Shao, and her red eyes suddenly brightened. Looking around to ensure that there was no one around, she then pulled him into the room. "Why are you here? This is the Betteridge family. What would happen if you were seen?" After pulling Han Shao and Emily hurriedly closed the door and set up a soundproof barrier before questioning him. "I was worried about you." Han Shao suddenly embraced Emily tightly as he replied tenderly, "I am all right. Phoebe had just left. Did you see her?" Being held tightly by Han Shao, Emily felt her heart calm down and asked softly, "No, after she found out about this matter today, I was afraid that she would make a scene. Hence I did not head over as well. However, I was keeping an eye on the situation the whole time." "Did Phoebe do anything to you?" You cried. Han Shao's heart ached as he stretched his hand over to stroke the corners of Emily's eyes as he replied tenderly, It's enough for me as long as I know you are worried about me. Phoebe is a good girl. She did not come over to cause a scene. Instead, we bared our hearts to each other and talked. Phoebe even consoled me constantly." "You have a good eye for women." Feeling Han Shao's tenderness, she suddenly felt that all her previous sufferings were worth it. Han Shao did not speak anymore and instead embraced Emily and gave her a kiss. At this moment, what Emily needed was precisely Han Shao's comfort. She couldn't help but respond enthusiastically, even taking the initiative to help Han Shao undress. As they kissed intensely, she led Han Shao to her inner chamber. Han Shao could feel Emily's fiery passion. With thoughts of atonement, Han Shao was more deliberate in pleasing her. His large hands started wandering around Emily's body tenderly while his lips were continuously joined with hers. When Emily was out of breath, he whispered sweet nothings into her ears instead. "Brian, oh, Brian," Emily moaned softly, appearing extremely aroused. While Han Shao's large hands were fondling Emily's round satiny bum, Emily had already spontaneously assisted in stripping off her clothes completely. She suddenly fell backward onto her soft pink-colored bed, displaying her naked body to Han Shao. Her almond eyes gazed longingly at Han Shao, gasping, weeping as she said softly, "Brian, I don't need you to be gentle, be rougher with me." Han Shao was startled for a moment, but soon after he growled as he pounced toward Emily. Discarding all notions of being gentle, he instead treated Emily violently. The Emily today was wilder than ever before, intensely pandering to Han Shao till the point where her delicate body could no longer withstand Han Shao's tempestuous priapic assault. In the end she fell asleep immediately, devoid of any trace of energy in her body. As Han Shao gazed at Emily as she slept in the wake of their pleasure having been utterly wrung out, he suddenly felt a sense of guilt. Emily was actually his first woman. He had raped her at the beginning and he had only viewed her as a tool to satiate his lust for the longest time. Only following Emily's silent efforts toward Han Shao did he gradually develop feelings for her. However, due to her unique identity, he was unable to give her a proper status. In principle, Phoebe should actually be the one that he should denounce. Emily, who had become his woman while bearing an unusual identity, was the real victim. Ever since Emily and Han Shao got together, she had always considered his needs and gave her all in doing things for him. As he gazed at the woman fast asleep in front of him, Han Shao started unwittingly reminiscing about the past. The more he recalled past events between the two of them, the guiltier he felt. I owe you too much, it has been hard on you. Han Shao sighed, muttering to himself as he gently caressed Emily's face. Everything was by my own will, I have never blamed you. Besides, I know you treat me well, there's nothing to feel guilty about. The sight of Emily's lips suddenly curled into a blissful smile as she opened her eyes after finishing her sentence. Oh, why have you woken up so quickly and not sleep a while more? Seeing Emily awaken, Han Shao couldn't help but knit his brows as he gently chided her. It's alright. After having sex with you, I could feel the mysterious energy you left within me. This energy has helped me improve my body, which is why I could recover so quickly. Brian, everything was really of my own will. I know that your heart actually aches for me, but so long as you love me, I don't hope for anything else. After all, my identity has been fixed. Emily stretched out her hand to caress Han Shao's firm face, smiling as she spoke softly. You will definitely get a formal status soon. I swear that I will give it to you. This is something you deserve. Han Shao looked at Emily, who had done much for him, and promised resolutely. Brian, do you want to know what is Phoebe's stance regarding our relationship? Emily had a joyous expression, kissing his chest before smiling as she asked. No matter what Phoebe's stance is, it will not affect our relationship. Even if she firmly disagrees, it wouldn't change a thing. Don't worry, I will talk to Phoebe about this. Han Shao promised, once again determined to not let Emily suffer any grievances. Geez, your words really made me happy. Emily chuckled and continued, in any case Phoebe agreed. Chapter 395, Entering the sect. Agreed? What did she agree to? Han Shao stared blankly and asked suspiciously. Naturally, it's agreeing to our matter. Emily explained cheerfully. I told Phoebe everything regarding our relationship, emphasizing that due to my identity I can't reveal our relationship. I also shared how my husband had suddenly died on the battlefield soon after I entered Betteridge family. After hearing me out, Phoebe even advised me for quite a while. Han Shao was amazed, suddenly feeling that Phoebe was really fair and reasonable. On the other hand, Emily was also extremely intelligent to be able to be a part of Dark Metal for so long. Making Phoebe approve of her identity with a few words was enough to prove that Emily's ability. Hearing Emily's words, Han Shao finally relaxed. He smiled as he gave her a light kiss before saying, Emily, you are really capable. Alright, enough of your honeyed words. Emily happily pushed Han Shao before saying, it's already quite late, you shouldn't stay here. I still need to go over and send my regards to father. Hearing Emily mention the Betteridge family head Mr. Han Shao thought for a moment before asking, which prince does Mr. Han support? I don't know, perhaps it is because father has retired from the military for too long. When the empire was in turmoil, father was not part of the empire's government, and neither has he mentioned the matters between the princes to me. Hearing Han Shao bring up official matters, Emily knitted her brows as she answered. Being silent for a moment, Han Shao then replied, if Mr. Han mentions this matter or has plans to support a certain prince, you should urge him to not act impulsively this few days so as to not lead the Betteridge family down the wrong path. Emily was shocked, asking astoundedly, "Why would you say this? Everyone doesn't think highly of Lawrence." However, if nothing unexpected happens, the next king would be Lawrence. These few days you should quietly observe from the side. I reckon that His Majesty would make major decisions very soon. After discussing terms with King Uhtred, he understood that Lawrence's situation would change drastically. Hence he reminded Emily, "Are you sure your information is accurate?" Emily clearly understood the gravity of this information, having a serious expression as she asked Han Sha-o. Han Sha-o nodded his head affirmatively and said, "I went to the palace today and heard this from the king himself. It's definitely true. In that case I must share this news with my father and brother immediately. In addition, there are a few other friends who are still observing the situation. I must remind them before it's too late." Upon hearing Han Sha-o's words, Emily already started wearing her clothes, carrying a worried expression. As this matter concerned all nobles of Lancelot Empire, every noble must take a side in this matter. If they chose the wrong side, their family might suffer a decline. Therefore they must act with caution. Han Sha-o could understand Emily's anxiety. He stood up and gently helped her put on her silk dress, helped her straighten her disheveled hair, and even applied rouge amidst her blissful smile before saying, "All right, be careful on your way." Emily obediently waited for Han Sha-o to finish helping her before happily giving him a kiss. She said with a smile, "I know you shouldn't stay here for too long. We are in the Betteridge family residence. I will leave now." Han Sha-o smiled. After sorting his clothes and watching Emily leave to find Hans, he left silently as well. Upon entering his residence, Han Sha-o felt the heavy killing intent from Balins. With a glance he saw Balins hiding in the shadows. "Lord Marquis." Han Sha-o hadn't even entered his room when Balins suddenly shouted in a low voice and walked out from the shadows. There were no strong guards within Han Sha-o's residence. Apart from Han Sha-o, there was no one else within the residence that he would be worried about. Therefore he did not lay down any formations. After all, an expert like Balins would not be seen by normal people. Balins was dressed long grey robes, had a malevolent face, and was shrouded with dense killing intent. Any normal person who saw him would definitely be filled with fear. "Let's talk inside." Han Sha-o glanced at Balins, smiling before entering his room, with Balins following behind. Inside the room, Han Sha-o surveyed the area through his mystical demons. He saw that there were no suspicious individuals in the surroundings. Phoebe had also returned to Boost Merchant Guild after being unable to meet Han Sha-o. Sitting down, Han Sha-o smiled at Balins and asked, "So what is your decision?" Balins had an excited expression as he nodded his head and answered, "I would like to learn your martial technique. Lord Carl has already agreed, but he wants to meet you in person." Han Sha-o wasn't shocked. In this world, only Han Sha-o could give Balins what he needed. With Balins' degree of obsession with this martial technique, he would definitely agree. What Han Sha-o did not understand was why Carl Ascot would want to see him. Staring blankly for a moment, Han Sha-o frowned as he asked, "Why does Mr. Carl want to see me?" Balins answered while shaking his head, "I'm not sure." "I see," Han Sha-o muttered to himself before asking, "When does he want to see me? Where should I look for him?" "If you have the time, my lord wants me to bring you to see him," Balins respectfully answered. "In that case, how about I go meet him immediately?" "Oh, it is late already. Would Lord Carl already be resting?" Han Sha-o originally wanted to meet him immediately, but thinking further he corrected himself. "It's alright, my lord usually rests very late. If you are free we can leave now," Balins answered. "Alright then, let's leave now," Han Sha-o coolly said before heading with Balins in the direction of the northern rose garden. Under the serene glow of moonlight, Han Sha-o and Balins made their way toward the north. The speed of Balins, who was an experienced assassin, was as fast as lightning. In addition, he was used to moving through dark places, therefore normal people could not detect his presence. Han Sha-o, who had reached the separate demon realm, had a few mystical demons to observe his surroundings. Han Sha-o drifted around like a specter, not afraid of being seen even on the bright streets. As his speed was also extremely fast, Han Sha-o's shadow was like a stream of smoke brushing past. Compared to Balins' carefulness, Han Sha-o appeared calm. With his mystical demons, Han Shao could easily avoid areas where there were people and still follow Balins closely. Upon reaching the region of the Northern Rose Garden, both of them decreased their speeds. In the dead of night, it was the perfect time to carry out indecent matters. On the streets towards Northern Rose Garden, many beautiful carriages could be seen quietly traveling along, with a few butlers or servants gracefully leading them from the front. All of them were headed for the Northern Rose Garden. As Lancelot Empire's famous red light district, business at the Northern Rose Garden was fantastic. With the Saint Swordsman Carl overseeing the safety and Lawrence excelling at running a business, the Northern Rose Garden had simply become a lair for ecstasy. It was because of the sudden increase in traffic toward the Northern Rose Garden that Han Shao and Balins had to slow down. Since Balins was familiar with the area, he led Han Shao toward the back door. The back door of the Rose Garden was more remote. Usually only staff used this entrance unless it was to receive those with sensitive identities. The nobles who were seeking pleasure would not pass by this place. Balin, since you have already decided to join my sect, there are some matters I need to make clear, Han Shao said to Balins as they headed toward the rear entrance. Please give your instructions. Balins respectfully replied. Balins, you need not be too polite. In the future you can just call me Senior Brother instead of Marquis. Our sect is called Heavenly Demon Sect, and only a few people within the Profound Continent know of us. Our master was formerly an otherworldly expert. He had come to the Profound Continent by chance and imparted this martial technique to me before leaving. Han Shao suppressed his voice as he spun some lies. Balins listened earnestly. After Han Shao finished, Balins was shocked and excitedly said to think that master was so powerful. He was actually an otherworldly expert. No wonder he possessed such mysterious techniques which are unheard of in the whole Profound Continent. Not being able to meet such a figure is indeed regrettable. Hey master's strength is unfathomable. I will impart Heavenly Demon Sect's marital technique to you on behalf of master. With your aptitude it will definitely be of much use. Don't worry, the use and concealment of killing intent is the fundamentals of the Heavenly Demon Manual. You will not only be able to quickly grasp it, you will also obtain stronger killing techniques, Han Shao solemnly said. The technique Han Shao would impart to Balins was called God-slaying devil path. It is not an orthodox demonic cultivator's technique. Even if Balins cultivated it to the peak, he would not be able to reach Han Shao's level. However, if Balins was able to proficiently grasp this technique, his strength would definitely soar. However, this kind of progress had the slight intention of spoiling things through excessive enthusiasm. It completely took advantage of Balin's dense killing intent to rapidly increase his strength. However, it wasn't a step-by-step technique like the one Han Shao was practicing, and didn't have the unlimited possibility for improvement. Han Shao only needed a junior brother that was able to help him root out dissidents, and not someone who could contend against him in terms of demonic arts. Therefore, no matter how much Balins improved, he wouldn't be able to threaten Han Shao's position. Senior brother, thank you. When they were about to enter Northern Rose Garden, Balins bowed respectfully to Han Shao. Han Shao wasn't in a hurry to enter Rose Garden. He smiled and replied after receiving Balin's bow, as you have yet officially entered the sect, I still can immediately impart our sect's technique to you. Once I met Mr. Carl, I will help you handle the entrance rites. After you have officially joined Heavenly Demon Sect, I will help you reform your body before teaching you our sect's techniques. I will listen to senior brother. Although Balins was older, he was still respectful in front of Han Shao and did not dare to have any slightest neglect. Han Shao smiled as he nodded his head. Alright, bring me into the Rose Garden. Balins led Han Shao down the path Lawrence had previously used that led to the secret chamber. After opening the passageway, Balins led Han Shao through many complicated alleys before they finally reached the location of Saint Swordsman Carl. Saint Swordsman Carl was sitting on a boulder in the huge white space. Although his hair was white, he was glistening with vigor as his kindly eyes leisurely looked toward the front. Seeing Han Shao enter, Carl smiled. Kid, you are truly not simple. Balins left after leading Han Shao to the location, leaving Carl and Han Shao alone. After hearing Carl's praise, Han Shao couldn't help but smile reservedly. You are overly praising me. For you to have gifted divine weapon Starry Sky to Phoebe, your intentions are very good. Carl smiled before continuing, I won't get involved in the matter of you instructing Balins. You need not be worried. I have never regarded Balins as a servant, and he always had his freedom. For him to be so excited to learn this martial technique from you, you must definitely possess something that attracts him. I will respect his decision. In that case, why have you summoned me? Han Shao had a relaxed expression as he smiled and asked. I only wish to see the person whom old astrologer Madame Grace had prophesied to be able to bring prosperity to the Lancelot Empire, and also to find out what do you plan to do for the Lancelot Empire. Coral stared brightly at Han Shao, smiling as he replied. Han Shao suddenly realized why Uddin had spoken in such a strange manner.